and open the room. Oh, let me co-host you real quick. Right there. Hi, everyone on YouTube, and open the room. Oh, let me co-host you real quick. We're letting everyone in. Welcome back, everyone, to the Pure Presence book study and our reading. This book study period is The Perfume of Silence. I'm sure all of you already know that. I'm just being a little, just repeating what we already know. This week is chapter 7. God is very mischievous. Do you guys also think that God is very mischievous? What a statement, right? It's kind of a funny thing. And it is true that God can be mischievous. And when you understand that God isn't out there somewhere, but God is the presence of all things, it does bring it into more of a laughable, kind of a funny idea that God is very mischievous. We can be very mischievous, and we can be challenging to ourselves and others. And welcome to our, I don't know which week it is, but it is chapter 7, and we're going to be looking at page 97. And all of you know that Jenny and I are both co-hosts, so this isn't my thing, it's our thing, and it's also your thing, because we're all one thing. Well, Jenny, thank you for being here again to help to support and to give highlights and your clarity and your great commentary to some of these ideas. And of course, one of the things that I love is that you're a Rupert student and just a love for truth, and also Francis, and you're with him weekly. I'm not, so I really draw from your weekly experiences with Francis, and many of you here are also in Francis's weekly meetings. I would be too. I just haven't found that I have time right now. And we really appreciate everyone's love and interest for Francis's work. He was brilliant in the conference, as he is in every meeting. He's kind of funny, when you first introduce Francis in any kind of a venue, when he comes on, he has nothing to say without a question. He's like waiting for a question, and then when you give him a question, man, you open the floodgates to the wisdom of the divine, the wisdom of clarity and presence that is extraordinary. And Jenny, we're on page 97, and I'm going to ask you to kick it off, and let's get started with this week's book study.
Well, the very first question has such a lovely answer. So it starts with, I have a sense of returning to the fundamental consciousness that everyone has. Is it a recognition rather than a process? And that question is phrased in a way that betrays the belief that there are people who have consciousness, whereas it's consciousness that has or manifests human bodies and minds. And it's so common to imagine that consciousness is a place that we go to. We say, when I'm in consciousness, but consciousness is what we are, not where we are. It's not a place, and there's nothing individual about it. No, my consciousness and your consciousness. So he says there's nobody to return and nowhere to return to. All bodies are in this nobody. The entire where is in this nowhere.
Yes. Yes, it is. I like the way you just presented that. That it's that it's the reference to thinking that we go and we all do. I mean, I do it sometimes when I talk about not as much as I used to, but talking about awakening awareness. Well, awareness doesn't awaken. But that's what it implies. It implies that awareness goes to sleep. And this is that same kind of an idea because we in a subtle way we sort of lose ourselves as we or we I don't think we lose ourselves, but we ignore ourselves by identifying as the body mind by habit.
Yes, yes, exactly. And then he goes on after the next question to give an example of a woman thinking she has lost her necklace, but then realizing it was around her neck all the time. And so it's really just like that, but we have the habit of thinking we've lost it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Or that I'm not in it left me.
Yes,
And
yes,
who's the
yes.
me that it left, right?
Left. Exactly, yes.
Yeah, yeah. It is something that takes a little bit of time, and I know time is only relative to the body mind, but it does take some understanding and some uh, recognition. Somehow it has to come in this way that we self realize that we are the awareness of experience, and the awareness never leaves.
Yes,
And the coming and going of the experience is what we identify as. So we think the awareness comes and goes.
yes, yes. And that's why I particularly like this chapter, because for every question, Francis goes back to that fundamental principle of non duality and explains exactly that, because every question seems to come from that sense of separation, whereas really there is no separation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I looking at this next question, what is the role of the teacher? And then he talks about the necklace. The teacher does not give you a new necklace, but just asks you to look in the mirror. The
Yes,
teacher,
yes,
yeah. So, and when you take on that idea, you go, oh, okay. So look as awareness, look as presence, look in the mirror at what you are. The teacher does not give you anything new. One should be careful about any misunderstanding in this respect. Indian society is very hierarchical, highly differentiated, and due to these social traditions that have nothing to do with the truth, the guru is way above the fray. For instance, and I thought this was so good what he said here about Ramana Maharshi. The Brahmin caste is above everybody else, and this is an impediment at some point. Although Ramana Maharshi was a Brahmin, he would eat with everybody else at his ashram. There was a special dining room for the newcomers. Oh, let me let that person in. There we go. For the newcomers who were Brahmins, and initially they would eat there. However, since the teacher was not there, they would eventually move in with everybody else. He was always very careful not to be put on a pedestal. He would even become angry if he received special treatment, and rightfully so, because he didn't see himself as different from anyone else. And I thought that was significant. That statement right there is a significant statement to two things for me. One is that he didn't put himself above anyone else, like Rupert Spira. Rupert's exactly the same way. That was the first thing I noticed when I met Rupert, was his way of doing that. And then also, I like the idea in here that Ramana Maharshi, and I don't think Francis would be mentioning this if it wasn't so, but Ramana got angry. And
Yes, yes,
everyone, I probably have heard a dozen or maybe 2 dozen times of, oh, even Jesus turned over the tables in the temple and got mad. What about that? Well, they made him up to be, and I think Francis covers that in these next 2 pages. We made Jesus out to be something other than a man having an awakening experience. We put him on the pedestal, and he gets higher and higher and higher every year, every,
yes.
every so often. And this is just so clear in Francis's description of what we do with the guru.
Yes, but in a way, it's a natural thing to happen, because if our interaction with our teacher has led to us making what's really the most important discovery of our lives, we feel this sense of absolute awe at his knowledge and understanding, and this huge gratitude. So it takes a while for us to become really established in that understanding, and to realize that no, we are him. We are not in any way separate from him, and to really feel that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
until that point, then we see him as in some way superior to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's great respect that comes that comes out of love for the teacher's pointing, the teacher's demonstration, just like we do with Francis, Rupert, Ellen, any teacher that is Ramana, Muji, all of those beings, Gangaji, they all, they're not special, but they are really demonstrating a solid truth that we really are in honor. We honor that, we respect it, and we're grateful for it.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's see. It looks like, so I just talked about that, how we raised the guru up. I loved how Francis really said this, though. Usually, when the teacher dies, when his body dies, his pedestal is raised up to the ceiling at least. Then each subsequent year, it rises a couple more meters, and so eventually it is at an almost infinite distance from us. We forget that the teacher was and is what we are. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Just so clear, and it's so refreshing to have that representation unpacked a little bit.
Yes, and he says it's natural that there is respect, because the teacher sees the self in you, and respect calls for respect, and love calls for love. But at the same time, the teacher should make realization seem easy. And if a teacher makes it seem difficult and out of reach, then find another one rather like that.
Right. Yeah. Run the other way.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a teacher doesn't judge you. Everything is okay, and you are okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if there's any comments or questions that you would like to to ask about any of these pages. We're looking at 97 to 106 this week. Please use the raise hand function, and we'll look at that question. Or if you want to pick up the mic and ask it in person on video, you're welcome to do that also. And what else do we want to look at?
Yes, on page 99, he starts talking about freedom, and I love this. I had a beautiful discussion with him in one of his satsangs a little while ago about freedom. And he says here on page 99, freedom is the highest good. It is that which is closest to the self. Above love, above intelligence, above beauty, there is freedom. That's why this game we're playing is called the game of bondage and liberation. And that can seem quite puzzling because it's very easy to see that we don't choose our thoughts. And that implies that we don't choose our decisions or our actions either. But the freedom that Francis is writing about is the freedom of universal consciousness, not the freedom of an apparent separate entity. And when we recognize our true nature, then there is a sense of freedom which comes with that, and also a feeling of relief as well.
Oh yes, and it's obvious. It's an obvious experience, a visceral experience that it's not recognized, I don't think, at first. I think at first we're trying to understand concepts, we're trying to understand otherness, we're trying to understand an invisible realm of ideas, and it's a whole different paradigm of relating to an unseen, a known experience instead of a perceived experience. And
Yes.
so at first we don't recognize that this freedom that is being spoken of here is an not of this world. It's not of a physical freedom.
Yes, it's the freedom of our real nature. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like this at the bottom of page 99. There was a question. Would you say that at that point, the point is, well, I guess I need to include the question above. Although I appreciate what you have said, the questioner says, although I appreciate what you have said, the conditioning is deeply rooted. I am not sure whether I am doing things the right way or not, and I feel that I could, in freedom, make some big mistakes. And he goes on to say, in freedom there is no right and wrong, and no wrong. There are no mistakes because there is nobody to make mistakes. If we are afraid of making a mistake when we do something, the most important thing is to take a closer look at the original intention. If our original intention is pure, that is, if it is motivated by our interest in and our love for the truth, for freedom, we may make a mistake, but it will not matter. Life will take care of us. And that's a refreshing idea. That's a very refreshing idea, because when you look at what he said next, which is from the question that I just read, would you say that at the point of the student needed that at that point would you say the student needed the teacher? He says everything that happens to us teaches us.
Yes. Yes.
And that's why Francis often says there are no accidents. There's no this meeting today, right now, with whomever is here. There's no accident that you're here.
Yes, it says that everything teaches us. It teaches us if we're open to learn from it.
Right.
Yes.
If we relax our judgment from it, if we relax a mental commentary or a personal self reference based on something that happened in the past or something we're worried about in the future, if we relax from that, all these experiences can all imbue that quality of that will eventually bring freedom from it.
Yes. Yes.
Just beautiful words of wisdom on every single page.
It is, and I love the next question about making decisions in terms of other people's freedoms, like children or anyone that you're responsible for looking after, and the concern that what's happening, well, to make sure that the right thing happens. And then he explains that what's necessary is to know our own freedom. It's not for us to decide what the child's freedom is. If we know our own freedom, then whatever we say or do comes from that, and that's going to transmit itself to the child. That's lovely. He says, so to make people free, all you have to do is to be free. It's our freedom that makes them free, not our desire to make them free. The desire to make them free binds them. In this freedom, we don't know what is going to happen.
Right. And not to know can be scary, or it can be comforting.
Yes.
It takes a while for it to become comforting.
Yes. I think it's just it's a welcoming of everything that experience brings us.
Yeah.
I had in the discussion I had with Francis, he said something very interesting, which was the mistake we make over and over again is to attribute freedom to an object or a person. If we attribute freedom to an object, we limit it. It is the same operation of ignorance through which we attribute the perceiving reality awareness to a specific body mind, thereby limiting it, making that which is eternal and infinite, finite and ephemeral. So that was interesting, that it was really the same basic process, that when we attribute freedom to an object or a person, if we think I, the separate self, wants to be free, then that's not real freedom, that's a limitation.
Yeah. Did you see the bios talk in the conference? Bio Kamala?
No, I didn't.
No. He gave maybe one of the best presentations I've ever heard from someone. And he's from India. He's originally from Nigeria. He's a black man that gave one of the most amazing presentations in referencing freedom in a way that was it was just breathtaking, the way he used visuals and the way he looked at that was so amazing. I'm going to put that video. I shared it in an email that went out to about 12,000 people, but I'm going to put that video in the member area of the book club in Facebook, just so if anyone wants to watch that, I'll put the link in that YouTube if you want to watch it. It was amazing. And it was this
Great.
kind of freedom.
Yes. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was such, I was just, I couldn't, I didn't even want to talk. It was like watching Rupert or Muji or Francis. I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe what just came out of this man's presentation. It was just significant.
Yes. Yes.
So, looking at the next question on page one, oh, wait a minute. Rick had a comment on page 100. Rick had a question that he emailed, and I think I saw it here too. Yeah. Freedom on page 100. Francis explains how we are freedom itself. So I'm just going to pause there. Francis explains how we are freedom itself. And just pausing and receiving that idea. He also provides a great pointer, freedom from and freedom to. And then this would be Rick's question. Would it be accurate to say that these pointers are synonymous with the understanding that I am nothing, wisdom, freedom from, and I am everything, love, freedom to?
Yes. This was something this is one of the things I was discussing with Francis, and yes, certainly, freedom from it's the same as the Indian concept of moksha, liberation. So it includes freedom from suffering, because it's freedom from the belief in separation, in being a separate self. So that's the essence of freedom from, and that's the relief of suffering. Freedom to, he says, comes a lot later, and I said to him, it feels like it's got nothing to do with choosing, because not only do we not choose anything, I said, I feel that there isn't anything that chooses. It's not consciousness choosing either. There's no chooser of anything, and he agreed with that. And he said it's more like one possibility out of an infinite array of possibilities being actualized, that whatever happens comes from freedom, because it's just one of an infinite number of things that might have happened. So that was his definition of freedom too, which is, I think it takes a while for that to really sink in and to really feel that. But I think the way you feel that is through the automatic welcoming of all experience that arises.
Mm. Yeah, that's what I was what I was feeling and hearing as you were talking is allowing,
Yes, exactly. Yes, yes.
allowing and
Mm,
welcoming,
yeah.
and not having a preference. But I think what happens is even in the body suit, when that sinks in, we recognize that preferences sort of they dissolve in there's just it's not just an acceptance. It's kind of a that you're being carried.
Yes, I mean the body will still have preferences in the sense of preferences for the sort of food that it likes and the sort that it doesn't like so much. But it's, as you say, it's when things happen, you feel, yes, this is just what's happening. This is this is what is arising in myself. It's not separate. Whatever is arising is not separate from myself. So there's nothing there to resist, because it's all just as it's meant to be. It's all just happening as it is.
Well, would you say that with the idea, this thread of no preferences, no decisions, would you say that this the preferences, or when the person seemingly makes decisions, it's based on a frequency that is that's harmonized with beingness?
Yes, I think if you are, in my experience, if you are abiding as yourself, that there's this automatic inner recognition of what you really are, then yes, those choices, they just happen. They're not, you don't make them. They just happen. They arise, and they are in harmony. When you feel a sense of separation, then there's a kind of resistance there against what is happening. And whenever you feel resistance, that has a sense of disharmony or discord about it, doesn't it?
Right. So it's almost a vibratory frequency that is moving the body mind. And of course, if you're seated in understanding, the mind is no longer stepping in and saying, "I did that, I'm doing that," and taking credit for it.
Yes.
Right. Wow, that's an interesting.
I'm afraid that's my cat wanting some attention. Where I am, it's difficult to keep it away.
What's the cat's name?
Well, the cat is called Fu Xing, and Fu Xing was the Chinese god of happiness.
Oh, good.
Not sure quite how happy he is at the moment.
I was going to ask if the cat was Chinese when you gave that name.
Well, he's a Siamese cat, but it seemed an appropriate name.
Right. I've met Fu Xing. Okay. Well, I was wondering what that noise was. I was looking for an open mic. I didn't see one. I'm going, let me see if, okay, when I turn mine off, it's still only coming from Jenny. So thanks for the update on that, on Fu Xing. Love you, Fu Xing. All right. Looking at the next question, there was a question that says, I always seem to feel separate one way or another. Now, I've heard dozens of people say this. And what Francis says about this, he says, is the separateness always present? For instance, when you hear or see something? No, the separateness is perceived. It is present only as long as it is perceived. Irrespective of what the separateness is made of, whether it is beliefs, thoughts, or bodily sensations, where is it when something else is present? For instance, when you are reading a book or watching television, it is not perceived. Understand that there are many moments, for instance, right now, when separateness is not perceived. And I felt this explanation was really important because it keeps you from chasing after things that come and go.
Yes, exactly. And if you notice that you are feeling a sense of separation, then that's probably because there's a gap, there's nothing that you're needing to do at that moment or focus on at that moment. And that's such a lovely opportunity. You can regard it as an invitation from your true self to look at what you really are, and that's such a good moment for self-inquiry. So it's a very positive thing. It's positive either way.
Yes.
There really isn't a problem there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's actually, it's giving us it's giving a rest.
Yes.
It's giving us, it's actually relaxing back into self awareness. It's relaxing back into peace and the flow of just presence.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. He goes on to say down in the last paragraph on 101, you have understood this until, so the questioner says, I guess I need to start at the next paragraph. When you are looking at a landscape, thinking, watching television, reading a book, and so on, there's no separation. I like that idea that he said right there. Perhaps it comes and goes, but when you are really experiencing whatever it is, when you are listening to these words, for instance, there is no separation. Is consciousness present during these moments? Of course. So you well know moments during which consciousness is not tied to the sense of separation, to the ego. The ego comes and goes. You have understood this intellectually, but it is more than intellectual. It is your actual experience that, like the images in the mirror, the ego comes and goes because it is a perceived object made of a thought or a feeling. All that needs to be done is to remain as awareness.
Yes.
This awareness is freedom. Understand that you are this freedom in which everything is allowed to come into existence. Just brilliant.
Yes, he keeps taking the questioner back to that real understanding of non-separation. It's you can see all of those questions came from a feeling of being separate and judging that feeling of being separate. But he just goes right back to it's not a problem. Just abide as what you are. The ego, you can't be something which comes and goes. The ego comes and goes. You can't be that.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that comes and goes, it just does. It just comes and goes. And it's like the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Oh, it's fun.
Well, we have a couple of comments and we have a hand up. I'm going to invite Mike to unmute your mic and whatever you want to have to say. Hi, Mike.
Thanks. Thank you, Bill. By the way, I enjoyed your conference. I participated and that was wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was awesome. Loved it myself.
As we were discussing this, one of the things that I've been really musing about is the witness ability of consciousness. And sometimes the witness seems to be an aspect of mind, and we might call that ego, because of the reaction, kind of like, oh, I did that, or something like that. So if there's that attachment, then it seems the witnessing aspect of consciousness is tied into mind versus the ultimate witness, which doesn't have anything to say about it. And it's an interesting point of looking. And so I was wondering if you guys would comment on that.
Yes, I would comment on exactly what you've said about the ultimate witness. That's what we need to go to, is that which witnesses the mind commentating, because when we talk about the mind witnessing, then often it's the mind commenting on something, commenting on what is happening. Oh, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that, I'm hearing this, I'm hearing that, and that's all just mind. And sometimes it will label things. And what's important is to go back to the ultimate witness that is aware of the mind witnessing or commenting on whatever is going on. And the mind really, Francis describes it sometimes as a biocomputer. It has no understanding. It doesn't understand. It just processes. It just does mechanical processing of the perceptions that it is presented with.
It seems, Jenny, like from the point of view of the mind, that's why all we can say is it feels like emptiness, that there's nothing there. And so a lot of scientists call it an illusion. Consciousness itself is an illusion because there's nothing to grab hold of. And it's just, it's. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. The mind certainly can't grab hold of it, and can't even really conceive of it. It's beyond the mind. And so sometimes Francis has said, well, what we need to be open to the idea that consciousness is solid like granite. Just imagine consciousness as solid, and the world that we see around us as being empty or nothingness. Everything, because even according to modern physics, if you go right down to the particle level, particle physics, you find that even particles don't really have an existence, that ultimately everything is just waves of probability, waves of energy. So ultimately everything that you regard as solid around you is not solid at all, but the one thing that pervades everything, and without which nothing could be experienced, is consciousness. So surely that has the greatest solidity. So that's why he describes the consciousness as being the reality that it experiences, the reality that perceives, and the ultimate perceiver.
I love that. I've heard you say that about your conversation, and there was something about it that really attracted me to the granite-like. And I've played with the experience of that, but just as you were saying that, it's just so beautiful because it shifts the perception of reality from matter to granite, but granite as consciousness. Yes. It's wonderful. It's so wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. I wouldn't add anything to what Jenny just said, and except I would say that, and I like the way Mike, the way you say that the witness, the perceiving witness is an aspect of consciousness. it's really not consciousness, because A Course in Miracles terms consciousness the ego, the perceiving the world. The non-dual, or the direct path, and what we're talking about here in consciousness is the ultimate reality. And your distinction is good. I really like the way you did differentiate it as an aspect of, which is what everything is. Although I think that those two terms can get people a little bit confused in the definition of what consciousness is in this realm.
Yes, and even the distinction between witness and witnessed is an artificial one, ultimately. That all is consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah, there's only one witness, just like there's only one
Yes.
awareness. The
Yes.
localized awareness, or the local witness, is what comes and goes. And when we attach our identity to that, we're with it.
Muji has a very, as you're talking about it now, it reminds me of a little thing Muji said, where he asked the woman about, she witnessed the accident, and is there something to say about it? And she says, oh yeah, I've got something to say. Well, that's not the true witness. And then he keeps bringing people back until there's nothing to say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for the the commentary and the question too, Mike. We have something that Rosalind said here. I totally agree with Bill regarding bio from the conference. In addition, I took away the openness and love that propels him. I know he is extraordinary. He's an extraordinary presenter. His point of view was embodied in his presence, and I was filled with calm, light, and inspiration. He was so, I would say, in a Christian, non-Christian, mystical way, he was spirit-filled, man. He was on fire. Yeah, he was great. Thank you, Rosalind. And Rick West has a comment. Consciousness is the ultimate shape shifter, but always home or free. It naturally strives to be in relationship with itself in the form of objects, to include the I, thought, feeling, the good news. The tendency is free to subside into a realm of no distinctions, no objects, just home and free.
Yeah.
That's an interesting statement, Rick. I love it. It's great. What do you think about that, Jenny?
I'm not sure I call it a shapeshifter.
Yeah, that was the only thing I was.
Yes, you.
That was the only thing I was curious about. But in a way, it's a shapeshifter, but it doesn't actually do anything except be itself.
Yes, I mean, but Francis does talk about consciousness taking the shape of experience. So I think it's fair from that point of view. Yes, I don't know about striving. Yes, I think as you say, I think consciousness is. It just is, and there's sometimes it's in movement, sometimes it's in rest, and I don't think it has any intentions. I don't think it makes any choices. I don't think it has any agendas. I think it just is. It's in the Indian traditions. It's sometimes described as lila, the movement of consciousness, as lila, which means play. It's the play of consciousness.
Well, one of the things I love about you, Jenny, and Francis, and Rupert, and the distinction, the the primary or the rooting of consciousness is only one thing. It's never changes, it never moves. It always is, because it's the one thing that brings us to what we would call home, or it's the one thing that brings us to presence. It's the one thing that never changes and always is, and we can rely on it to be. It's like the starting point and the ending point that's never different, that's never not.
Yes, yes.
It gives you a reference so that you can so that you can so that you don't get pulled by other activities and identify as that.
Yes, yeah.
On page 103, I like this. There was a question about Krishnamurti. He said Krishnamurti said that if one human being realized his true nature, then it would have an impact on the whole human consciousness. How could one human being influence consciousness? And listen to this answer in the first paragraph. He says, when we understand that we are not a personal entity, we stop reacting to aggression or unlovingness. We welcome it and let it dissolve within us. We are like a black hole. Such a black hole is very efficient. We need them in society. They gradually influence their surroundings. Whenever we welcome, at the same time, we radiate love. We may not be aware of it in the beginning, but this is exactly what happens. When we are in welcoming, we are radiant with love, and love has this transforming power. Therefore, be a black hole.
It's beautiful, isn't it? For those who are not familiar with black holes, it's an area of space where the gravitational pull is so strong that it sucks particles and photons, particles of light, towards it, and anything that comes close enough can't escape from it. It gets sucked into it, and it gets heated up inside the black hole, and it disappears. And no light is reflected back from black holes. All of it gets absorbed, and that's why you can't see them through a telescope. But high energy radiation is emitted from them, and that's really the model that he's using. That love is like this high energy ultraviolet radiation that gets emitted from black holes, that it absorbs all the low energy conflict that you come across, and then emits love. It's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. I had no clue about any of that part of the black hole.
He uses so many science analogies that yes, it's worth explaining them.
Yeah, sure is. I'm thinking that Martin Luther King was a bit like a black hole, and Gandhi, and Nelson Mandela, and those beings that have, they were change makers. They didn't even know all of this stuff. They were just living it, a living demonstration of this.
Yes, and emitted love. Just yes.
Yeah. He says in the last paragraph, the second to the last paragraph on this page 103, I'm not telling you to be arrogant about your mistakes by saying God does it all. You may think so, but still apologize to the other person if appropriate, even though you realize that nobody did it, nobody as a person, that is. Be loving towards those who have not always been right, because you also have not always been right. Understand that so-called teachers are also human beings. Allow them the freedom to make mistakes. Allow yourself the freedom to make mistakes. And I thought that was, I'm not sure what that was referring to, because I just circled it because I loved what he said.
I think that's really, really important. In some of the recent satsangs, he's mentioned how he saw Jean Klein make mistakes, and then Rupert has talked about Francis making mistakes, and I've seen Rupert make mistakes. And it doesn't mean that they're not established in truth or that their teaching is no good. We all make mistakes. And the great sages from the past were also imperfect. And he goes on to talk about, as you referred to earlier, Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta. And if we expect perfection from any teacher, then we've misunderstood the teaching. And he says, if we expect a human being to be perfect, it means we are expecting ourselves to be perfect, and we're looking for the impossible. It means we're missing the mark, and we somehow know it deep inside. We cannot make imperfection perfect. We cannot change what is limited and make it limitless. That which is limitless has always been limitless. That which is perfect has always been perfect. See that we are that, not the limited body-mind. And that's the path to perfection. And that's so beautiful. But I think it's a very important concept that we don't expect everyone to be perfect. We accept imperfection, and we see again that's not something that an individual has chosen. They've not chosen to make whatever mistakes they've made. They've not chosen them. Those mistakes have arisen through the play of consciousness, the activity of the universe.
Wow, that was an important point, Jenny. Thank you for highlighting that, because that really brings to everyone's experience what we can, any one of us can do this. You know, we'll have someone, we'll think of someone that is important, or they have really something important to say, and they make a mistake, and we go, not listening to them anymore.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's
exactly.
That's a tendency, that they make one mistake and you go, okay, that they're not really there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it can happen to any of us. It can happen to, and it will happen to any of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's, I think we have about 3 minutes left. I don't see any questions. A few comments. Yes, Jenny is an awesome anchor. I agree with that, 100,000%. And not to say that we haven't had other awesome anchors. We have had so many great co-host and host guests on this since I started this about 3 years ago. I am just grateful for people like Jenny, I mean, we've had many, many people come on that are brilliant co-hosts and host guests. But this kind of the last, Jenny, I'm going to leave it to you to close us with what you would, how you would sort of close this half of the first of chapter 7.
Yes, there's an important point. That's a question on page 105 about being compassionate towards other people and making the world a better place. And he makes such an important point. We are not part of consciousness. We are consciousness, the same consciousness. we all have this invisible witness in common, and that is this witness we call I. It's not your private witness, and that has to be clearly understood. So to begin with, take it as a possibility, and then compassion comes at a later stage. And he says, when we know who we are, we realize that the world doesn't need to be saved. First find your true nature and then see whether there's a world that needs saving. And that's beautiful. That's lovely.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. And then at the top of page 106, it says, true compassion, that is true compassion, true compassion, and it is also the most efficient compassion. It is the fastest way to help the world. If we do not know who we are, our actions will come from ignorance, and they will only add to ignorance. When we know who we are, we realize that the world doesn't need to be saved. First, find your true nature and then see whether there is still a world that needs saving.
Yes.
When we find out who we are, the world as we normally conceive of it disappears, for it is no longer experienced as being separate or outside of ourselves.
Yes, that's lovely.
Yes, that's profound also. That's why it only takes one person to access that. It only takes one. I mean, and there's no two-ness anywhere. There's not even though it looks like there's 52 of us, there's still only one.
Yes.
Well, we're at the end of our time, everyone, and thank you for being such a great participating audience and so present in your in being with us today. And thank you for the great questions, comments. Thank you, Jenny, for being such a great host and co-host. And it's just lovely. I just love this meeting together with all of you. And we'll see you next week for the rest of Chapter 7.
Thank you, everyone. It's been lovely to be with you all. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you all. All right, we'll see you.